This literally happened to me a week ago. I live alone, so obviously I'm home alone 90% of the time. I have friends and family that come over and stay the night sometimes, but other than that, most of the time I'm alone. I do get bored sometimes and a bit lonely, I guess, but I really do enjoy my space from the world. I suppose I am sort of an introvert, you could say. I love being in my apartment because I feel free and able to do what I like when I like. I was making myself dinner, spaghetti actually. It was around 11 p.m. My sleep schedule is all messed up because I work from home and I like to stay up late. So I usually eat my meals a little bit later than most people. A normal day for me, I go to sleep around 4 or 5 a.m. and I usually wake up just before noon. Like I said, it was around 11 p.m. While making dinner, I heard a knock, coming from what sounded like to be my neighbor's door. I didn't think much of it, but it did creep me out, and I forgot about it like seconds later. But then, I heard it again. This time it kinda sounded like it could have been my door. Just to be sure this time, I walked over and looked through my peephole. Just as I thought, there was no one there. After I ate dinner and relaxed on the couch for a bit to let my stomach settle, I decided to take a shower. Only a few minutes into my shower, I suddenly heard some loud noises in my apartment. I have 2 cats though, and they like to run around the house a lot being crazy. Sometimes they knock things down and get into things they are not supposed to. So I just brushed it off. I told myself that it was probably just my cats playing, a bit crazier than usual. As I was finishing up in the shower, I heard someone talking. My walls were paper thin, and sometimes I could hear my neighbors mumbling. But this time it was clear, and it sounded like someone was actually in my apartment. I turned the shower off, and I got dressed as quickly and quietly as possible while I was trying to listen. I couldn't make out what was being said. However, I came to the conclusion that there was definitely someone in my apartment. Oh no, I thought. I forgot to lock my sliding glass door. I have a bad habit of that, so I guarantee that's how someone got in. I live on the first floor, so anyone could have access to that sliding glass door. I waited for like 5 minutes in the bathroom. I waited for it to be completely silent, in hopes that whoever it was would be gone. I realized that I had to make a decision quick. Do I run to my room and try to grab my phone first, or to the kitchen for a knife to protect myself? You see, I'm a 5'3", 120-pound 19-year-old girl, so I'm not sure how much of a fight I could put up versus your average grown man, especially without any sort of weapon. I decided I had to go to the kitchen and grab a knife, and that was definitely my best chance. So that's what I did. I quickly ran to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. I peeked my head around the corner into the living room and no one was there. But my sliding glass door was wide open. I ran to the door immediately and closed it and locked it, and closed the blinds as well. I looked all throughout my apartment to make sure there was no one hiding anywhere. I searched everywhere, multiple times even, and I didn't find a single soul. Nothing was stolen either, but that didn't make me feel much better. I called the police and told them I wanted to report a break-in. They didn't seem to care much because they only sent one officer out and he didn't really do anything to help at all, or to comfort me whatsoever. They had nothing on the intruder, so the officer didn't even try, and I guarantee you they were not looking into the case at all. After that, I called my mom, a few of my friends, and my sister, but no one answered. It was late, so everyone was probably sleeping. I lied awake in my bed all night, just praying that he wouldn't come back. I texted my sister saying emergency in all caps. She then called me and I told her everything. She said I could come over if I needed, but I was honestly too scared to even leave my apartment, in case he was out there waiting for me. I asked my sister if she would just stay on the phone with me for a while instead. Well, it turns out my intuition was right, because after I was done talking to my sister on the phone and I hung up, shortly after, I heard a light knocking sound on my sliding glass door. At this point it was like 2 a.m., so it was dead in the night. Nobody I knew would be awake, so I called the police again and told them what was going on. Luckily the police station is literally only a mile away from my apartment, so 2 officers arrived in a matter of minutes. They searched the area for a potential suspect but couldn't find anyone. They left, and yet again I had no answers. I stayed awake until the sun came out and called my sister and told her that I was coming over and that I really needed to get some shut-eye before I lost my mind. My father and I installed cameras the next day, all around the outside of my apartment and the inside as well. It's been weeks now and nothing else has happened that I'm aware of. My lease ends in about a month though, and I'll be moving out soon. I'm not sure what kind of crazy person would want to scare me like that, or what they might want from me. I also had not a single clue of who it could be, but it's left me terrified to be home alone now. Usually I stay at my sister's or a friend's house, but when I do stay home, usually someone is with me. I'm not sure if I will ever be able to let my guard down ever again when I'm home alone. It's sad because home is supposed to be somewhere you feel safe and where you are safe, but that's just not the case for me right now. Hopefully in the future when I move, I'll start feeling safe again. Last winter, when I was home alone at my grandparents' house sitting for them while they were on vacation for a few weeks, something terrifying happened. They go down south to Florida every year now that they are retired. The first year they went back in 2016, their house ended up getting broken into while they were gone. Whoever it was stole everything they could. I mean over $50,000 worth of stuff, like TVs, jewelry, expensive paintings, just everything that they thought they could take that would be valuable, I assume. They never found out who did it though, but now they have an alarm system set up in their house, along with a Ring camera and a locked gate at the end of their driveway, and for extra precaution, their whole property is also fenced off. My grandparents live in a really nice house. They definitely live in an upper class area, and a lot of their neighbors are legit millionaires. So I'm sure why you can see how that may attract the wrong people who might be looking to do a home invasion or something crazy like that. It's also very quiet where they live, especially at night. They have maybe 3 or 4 neighbors within a quarter-mile radius of their house, so people who are up to no good unfortunately can get away with a lot more, as there really isn't anyone on the lookout as much, since there isn't as many people around like there would be in the city. So that's why they have me house sit for them while they're gone. They pay me really well and let me do whatever I want, so really I look forward to this every year. I get the whole house to myself, so I can quite literally do whatever I want, like I said. They do have a few rules and I follow them for the most part, but not always. They have a bar downstairs and a huge TV. They also have a pool and a hot tub outside as well, and lots of other nice things to do. I also bring my hunting stuff because they have over 8 acres of property, and I'm a big hunter, so I bring my hunting stuff in case I decide to go out once or twice while I'm there. And having my rifle with me keeps me at peace, knowing I have protection in case someone were to try to break in again. A lot of nights I invite a friend or two over as well. That way I don't get as anxious about being alone. But this night I was alone. I don't remember what I was doing at that specific moment, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the security alarm started beeping. I'm pretty sure they have sensors when the front, the back, and the garage doors open, and it only sets off when one of the doors open, meaning that somebody was in the house right now. I call my mom first because, I don't know why, I just thought to call her first. As the phone was ringing, I realized I forgot, but I remembered that she was the only person I knew of that had a spare key to my grandparents' house. So when she picked up the phone, I immediately asked her if she was the one that opened the door. She said that she was sleeping, and I told her to stop messing with me. I think she thought at the time I was messing with her because she didn't take me seriously at all and hung up on me, and told me to go to sleep and to stop messing around. I walked outside of the bedroom and looked downstairs at the living room from the top of the staircase, and I saw a silhouette of what looked like to be a man's shadow hovering over the couch, and it kind of looked like he was searching for something. I called my mom back immediately and told her that I thought someone had broken into the house, and that I saw someone in the living room. I told her I was serious and that I was freaking out really bad. She then told me that it wasn't her or my dad, or anyone else that should have been there right now, and to get out of there immediately. I waited for the man to walk away, and I booked it down the stairs, out of the front door, and ran down the long dirt road about a quarter mile probably. I hid in a cornfield while I was on the phone with my mom, waiting for her to pick me up. My dad called the police and my parents made it to me in less than 15 minutes. I'm just happy that whoever it was that broke in didn't see me at least. I wasn't sure if they took anything or not, but when my grandparents got back, my grandpa said he was missing a watch, some shoes, and some other clothing items, I guess. I guess the intruder got cold feet or something and then took off before he could get anything that was really expensive. Or who knows what he had going on. I just worry for my grandparents because that is the second time that their house has been broken into now. One of the worst things about this whole situation is that my mom thought I was joking when I called her the first time, and I thought she was the one that was messing with me. My family and I grew up playing pranks on each other constantly, and sometimes we would take the pranks way too far. We learned to never make any dumb jokes or do any crazy pranks ever again after that, because it's simply not worth it, especially knowing that things could have went a lot worse for me that night. The thought of what could have happened frequently keeps me awake at night. This took place a couple years ago. It was spring 2018, somewhere in the middle of April on a Saturday night. I used to go out every weekend with my friends to the bar, or we would go to one another's house. My point is, we would always be out partying somewhere, almost every weekend. This specific Saturday though, I stayed home, as I was really hungover from the night before. I never used to get hungover when I was younger, but it started to creep up on me the older I got. I actually don't drink anymore at all now. I mean, maybe once in a blue moon, but when I do, it's never more than 3 drinks, and I certainly don't get hangovers. I lived with my girlfriend at the time, but she worked third shift, so usually she would work from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., maybe 8 o'clock in the morning sometimes. She was working a lot of overtime back then, so that's why she was working the weekend. Her car had been broken down at the time as well, so for a few months I took her to work every day until she could get her car fixed. Well, after I dropped her off at work and I got home, the first thing I noticed was there was a car I didn't recognize in the driveway. And then I noticed that all the lights were off in my house. I always leave the porch light on at night, and I was certain that I left the living room light on as well before I left, because that's usually what I do. Keep in mind, this was like 12 in the morning, so it was very dark outside. I made the not so smart decision by walking up to the porch to see what was going on. I noticed the front door was cracked open as well. I peeked through the front window, but I couldn't see much. Then I saw what looked like to be a flashlight moving around in my house. I started getting very anxious, and I thought about running back to my car and calling the police. But something got a hold of me, and I completely ditched that idea and tried to handle it myself. I sat there quietly for a bit, just trying to listen. I heard footsteps coming from inside, but no talking. That's when I made the conscious decision to open the front door all the way, and as I opened it slowly, it started creaking. There was a man in my house wearing all black, with a really weird looking mask on. "Hey, get the hell out of my house," I said. I started cussing him out. He then charged me and tried hitting me multiple times, but he missed every punch. I grabbed his arm and turned him around and got behind him and put him in a full Nelson. As I had him in a chokehold, I was hoping to God that there wasn't anyone else in my house. I waited until I was sure that he was out cold to call the police. I searched my house quickly to make sure there wasn't anyone else in my house. Meanwhile, checking on the man multiple times that was passed out on my living room floor to make sure he hadn't woken up yet. I kept a close eye on him while I waited for the police to get there. I held him for over 10 minutes because I wanted to make sure that when he woke up, I'd be there before he tried to run or attack me again. This guy was much smaller than me, so it wasn't much of a problem for me to control him. When the police got there, they arrested him. He was charged with attempted armed robbery, aggravated assault, breaking and entering, and I think something else. Hopefully that taught him a lesson though, and hopefully he won't do anything like this ever again. He's in prison right now, rotting his life away over one incredibly dumb decision that never had to have happened in the first place. I'm glad he's in prison, and I hope he stays there for a long time. I don't feel bad for him whatsoever. I just hope that when he does get out, that he will be a changed man. I think about what could have happened to my girlfriend had she been there home alone when he broke in, and it eats me up inside because I would do anything to protect her. Last Halloween, my family threw a party, My parents invited some of our cousins, my aunts, and uncles, some of their friends, and some others. My younger cousin and I went trick-or-treating in the neighborhood while my family stayed home and partied. I've always been really into Halloween, but this year I wasn't feeling it so much. I'm not sure if it was because I am just simply getting older and outgrowing it, or if it was my general disinterest. Because the older I get, the more out of touch I felt with everything. I've been diagnosed with severe generalized anxiety disorder and major depression as well, so I'm sure that has something to do with it. This Halloween was just different. I didn't have that Halloween spirit in me. I wasn't as excited as I usually was, and it was probably also partially because this year I wasn't trick-or-treating with any of my friends. I was pretty much babysitting my little cousin Thomas the whole time, it felt like. It was definitely more of a chore than anything. I just wanted to hurry up and get it over with. My cousin was like 5 years younger than me. I think he was 10 because I was 15. So we didn't have too much to relate on, clearly because of our age gap. My parents were pretty harsh to me when I was younger. They still are, but not as bad. They grounded me on Halloween because I didn't end my last semester at school with all A's. I had one B+, and that just wasn't good enough for them. And part of my punishment was that I had to look after my cousin while we went trick-or-treating. The older I get, I feel like my parents are not as suitable as they should be to be parents. They both have severe emotional issues, but they often take it out on me. They punish me harshly for the smallest things sometimes, it seems. Yes, I was grounded on Halloween, but that didn't stop me from at least trying to have fun. I didn't want to be out there long though, because it was cold and I was not in the best mood. As we were walking around, my cousin Thomas wanted to stop at every house that we passed. I only went up to the houses with him every so often. I was satisfied with the amount of candy I was getting, and I didn't feel like going up to every house, so I would wait by the sidewalk most of the time. As the night continued, we were still trick-or-treating after an hour. I was starting to get bored, so I told Thomas we had to start heading back soon. We ended up digging deeper into this subdivision, and I lost track of time, so we actually ended up staying out there for the full 2 hours of trick-or-treating. It wasn't until I noticed that less and less people were out that I realized how long we had been out there. Everyone had been leaving as it was getting past the time you were supposed to be out trick-or-treating. I told Thomas we had to start heading back immediately. My neighborhood is fairly large, so if we would have went back the way we came from, it would have taken way longer than it would have had we just kept going the same way we were walking. My whole neighborhood is like a big circle with 12 or more different streets in the middle of it. Thomas kept insisting that he wanted to hit more houses on the way back, but I didn't let him. Because by this time, there was pretty much no one out. No one that was still trick-or-treating anyways. By the minute, it was getting darker, and more people were going home. Thomas started throwing a fit, and I was sick of hearing it, so I let him do one more house. I told him if I let him do one more, that he must be done after that. He agreed. He then went up to the last house, and on the way back to me, he sort of seemed a little bummed out. And that was probably because we were all finished trick-or-treating. This kid had gotten so much candy though, it was ridiculous. More than I ever did when I was a kid, so there was no need to be upset. So I assured him of just that. We had about a 10-minute walk back to the house from where we were. Whoa, do you see that? I asked Thomas. And that was when I stopped in my tracks and turned my whole body towards this house that completely blew my mind with how awesome their Halloween decorations were. It must have costed thousands upon thousands of dollars for all the cool stuff they had. I was just mesmerized. I mean, it was crazy. I don't know how long I was zoned out looking at that house because when I turned back around, Thomas wasn't right next to me anymore. And then I turned my head and looked a couple houses down the street, and there he was walking on the sidewalk to what I assumed another house to try and trick-or-treat so that he could get more candy. Kids don't listen, I thought. I took one last look at that house with all the crazy decorations, and it was just a few seconds after I heard car wheels burning rubber on the pavement, and then a few seconds after that, brief yelling. I couldn't make out what was being said, but I rushed over that way and realized Thomas was completely out of sight. I then saw the car speed off, and I heard more yelling. I ran over to where I last saw Thomas, and I was screaming his name in a desperate plea to find him. Apparently someone tried to kidnap Thomas, and a random man who was sitting on his porch witnessed the whole thing and scared the kidnapper off. The man shortly realized that Thomas was with me. Thomas and I both told him that we were cousins. The man made us wait there while he called the police. He didn't let us leave until an officer got there. That way we didn't have to walk home alone and risk that crazy kidnapper guy coming back. We all told the officer everything we knew. He then took us back home, where the police officer then helped my parents file a police report. When I got back, my whole family was hysterical. I mean, by far, that was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me, point blank, period. I get the shivers thinking about the whole situation. It's important to always be aware of your surroundings, especially at night and on Halloween, because sometimes there are real monsters lurking in the shadows. This took place on the night of Halloween, October 31st, 2016. I was 14 years old at the time. Two friends and I were out trick-or-treating in the same neighborhood we go to every year. We were just your average 8th and 9th graders storming around the neighborhood causing havoc like we always did. Throughout the night, there was this strange guy that we kept seeing that was dressed in an all-black outfit, black sweatshirt, pants, shoes, gloves, and a ski mask. Everything was all black, so a lot of the time we could barely even see him. He would continuously stand across the street from us and just stare. He wouldn't move a muscle until we all looked away, and then bam, a few minutes later, we would notice him again, staring at us from another location. We kept poking fun at him as a joke because we thought it was funny. I'm sure you could imagine how we were innocently antagonizing the man. We were all just joking though, and not at any point were we ever trying to be actually mean whatsoever. I mean, he was messing with us, so we were messing with him as well. It got to the point though to where he was doing this for the whole 2 hours of trick-or-treating. I ended up getting a little annoyed and told him to heck off. I yelled at him and told him to seriously leave us alone and that it wasn't funny anymore. I wish I never would have though, because maybe he never would have targeted me and come for me that night. When I told him to screw off politely as possible, he just stood there continuously staring like he had been the whole night. Man, that guy's a weirdo, Alex said. Yeah, it was funny at first, but geez, give it a break, I said. Everyone agreed. We then walked away and didn't see him for the remainder of the night. Well, until I was alone, that is. We all started separating shortly after, as it was near the end of Halloween. I was with a lot of people throughout the night, on and off, and my group changed throughout the night multiple times. Some of us lived only a short walk down the road. Others lived in the same neighborhood we were trick-or-treating in, so most of us just walked home. It was just me and Alex walking at this point, because we had to go the same way for a bit until I had to turn a different way out of the neighborhood. I told him I was a little scared that guy was going to show up again. He started making fun of me a bit and told me to not be ridiculous and that guy was clearly joking and only doing a fake Halloween scare prank on us or something. After a few minutes of walking, we both had to go our own way, so I told Alex that I would talk to him later tonight on Xbox and to be safe walking home. On my way home, walking by myself, I couldn't shake the thought of what the hell would happen if that guy were to start following me. It was right then when I saw a shadow up ahead down the street, standing directly in the middle of the road of a four-way stop. My heart skipped a beat. I still had about 3/4 of a mile of a walk before I got home. It was him, the guy who had been following us all night. I just knew it because as I got closer, I saw he was wearing all black, and he was just standing there staring at me again, just like he had been doing all night. I had to take a right turn on the street where he was standing, so if I wanted to get home, I would have to get much closer to him. The closer I got, I was trying to pretend like I didn't notice him. At the same time though, I couldn't help but look at him every few seconds. What do you want? Do you think you're cool trying to scare a little kid? I'm going to call the police. It's not funny, dude. This is way past a joke, and if you still think it's funny, you're messed up. He then started walking towards me. Luckily, I was close to the street I had to turn on, so I booked it as soon as he made his first step. I couldn't believe my luck. I would like to think that this is my good karma, but luckily a cop turned right out of one of the streets into my direction from the neighborhood and saw me running. He sped up to me and stopped me and asked me what was going on. I told him everything and that man over there had been harassing me and my friends all night, and that I had told him to leave me alone multiple times. Apparently the police department had gotten multiple complaints about him throughout the night. The man ended up getting arrested and charged with harassment and trying to evade the police, because he took off as soon as the cop asked him what he was doing. The officer caught up to him quickly after he ran. That's when I ran home. That creepy man waited until I was completely alone to continue harassing me, which is messed up. I guess he was let out on bail a few days later, and it creeps me out to this day still to think about. I just have this feeling it was more than a prank. Halloween is really the best time of the year and my favorite holiday besides Christmas. I love the Halloween spirit and I love dressing up as well. I always have. This particular Halloween was supposed to be great, but not only was it the worst Halloween I've ever had, it was also the worst day of my life. 5 years ago on Halloween Day, I wasn't feeling well, and so I had to skip out this year. My friends and I were pretty bummed, but I mean, what could you do? I was sick, you know? I was 19 at the time and living by myself in a house that I had been renting for the last 6 months. I tried laying down come nighttime and tried watching scary movies and eating snacks, but I just really wasn't feeling well at all and ended up falling asleep fairly quickly. I don't know how long I was sleeping for before I woke up to some really loud banging in my house and like on the walls and stuff being ripped throughout my cabinets and off my counters. I didn't know what the hell was going on, but I woke up quick and way too scared to walk out immediately. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds waiting for it to stop. I reached for my phone to try and call the police, but I remember the last I had it was out in the living room, and there was no way I was going out there right now. I locked my bedroom door and put my dresser in front of the door. That way they couldn't break into my room if they tried, which I thought for sure they would try. I waited for what felt like forever, but only a few minutes. Probably 10 minutes maximum. Really, I was just waiting for a long period of silence, in hopes that the intruder would be gone when I opened the door. I finally gained the courage to take a look outside of my room, to try and see what was going on and to find my phone. My house was a disaster, and after that, the first thing I noticed was that my front door was open, and that my phone was not where I had it last. I immediately locked the door and checked to see that all my windows were locked, and tried to search for my phone. I looked for it for like 10 minutes, until I finally found it sitting on the counter lying under a cereal box that was knocked down from the top of my pantry. My phone had a sticky note on it that said, and I quote, "Don't be scared," with a smiley face on it. I felt sick to my stomach after I read that. When I took the sticky note off, my phone was cracked, and I mean the screen was absolutely shattered. My phone had been broken and I could not get it to turn on at all. My first thought was that it was my crazy ex-boyfriend. I didn't really think it was him for sure, but I just had a feeling, I guess. Luckily I had cameras outside of my house though, and they were hooked up through an app on my laptop. I could go to the app at any time to see live camera footage, or to see what I had previously recorded. When I turned it on, there was a strange man standing at the end of my driveway looking directly at my house with a very disturbing looking costume and mask on. I was absolutely terrified, so I went out into the kitchen and grabbed a knife in case I had to protect myself. But they were all missing. He must have taken them all with him or put them somewhere or something. I went back to my room and grabbed a hammer and my pepper spray that I had tucked away on my upper shelf in my closet. I figured it was better than nothing. I then locked myself in my room again with my dresser in front of the door. At least I knew he wasn't in the house anymore because I saw him outside of my live camera app. Or so I thought anyway. I then remembered I had an old iPod that I could use with the Wi-Fi to text on with a free app called Text Now. It took me 5 minutes of digging around my room to finally find it. Of course it was dead though. And this piece of junk was so old, so I was freaking out and wondering if it would even still work. I found the charger for it and plugged it in, and it actually started charging it. The amount of relief I felt was intense. The problem was that it took over 20 minutes to finally turn on. The whole entire time I was waiting for it to turn on, I was lying in my bed under my sheets with drizzling anxiety and my bedroom lights off, praying to God that everything was going to be okay. When it finally turned on, I sent a text to my mom that said, "This is Olivia. Call the police now. Send them to my house. Emergency. Now." In all caps. "I am in danger. Somebody broke into my house." I'm not sure how long it took my mom to see that message, because the police didn't arrive for about 30 minutes. I remember I was lying there crying, just waiting. I looked at my live camera app again and saw that the strange man wasn't there anymore. That gave me a sense of relief as well, but not enough to leave my house or to sleep. This is unbelievably disturbing and just absolutely jaw-dropping. But as I was laying there, I heard heavy, muffled breathing that sounded like it was coming from nearby. I sat up quick, and I moved the dresser from behind my door and looked all throughout my house again, but no one was there. That was when it hit me. The only place that I hadn't looked yet was under my bed. My gut feeling told me that I should leave the house right now and run and try to find help right away. And my gut was telling me that there was somebody under my bed. I don't know why or how to explain what took over me, but I felt like I had to check for myself. I slowly peeked my head under the bed, lifted the bed skirt, and there he was, clear as day. He swatted at me with his hand and tried to grab me. I ran immediately. Before he even had time to get out from under the bed, I had already ran out of the front door of my house. I ran to my neighbors screaming and called my mom. She was happy to hear from me, but she said she had already called the police. I explained everything to her and waited for the police at my neighbor's house. When the cops got there, they said they couldn't find anyone. They assured me that they thoroughly searched the house and that there was definitely nobody there. That didn't make me feel much better at all. Knowing they never caught the man, I blatantly refused to stay another night in that house, especially by myself. I'll be moving as soon as possible. I have been staying at my mom's house ever since, and I will until I can find another place to live, somewhere that I actually feel safe. That live camera app I used must be delayed or something, or maybe my app was glitching, or just maybe there was more than one person that night. I'm going to start this off by saying this is by far the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. I was browsing Craigslist looking for a new TV. I saw a 55-inch smart TV listed for $150. I contacted the seller and asked if it was still available and told him that I was really interested. He said yes, and he asked me if I would like to come by to take a look at it. And I said yes, of course. That's when he asked if I could come check it out later that night. He sent me his address, and so I looked up where he was located. He was about a half hour away, which was a little longer than I felt like driving, but I said to hell with it and went anyways. He said he worked late on Fridays and asked if I could be there at 9:30. I thought about it for a bit, but like I said, I just decided to go. I really wanted the TV, and my friend Mason was coming with me as well to help ensure my safety. Mason didn't come inside with me though. He stayed in the car. Even though that wouldn't be much help had something gone sideways, it still made me feel better knowing that someone was just right outside and that he knew where I was. When I got there and knocked on the door, he answered almost immediately. "Hey man, how are you?" he asked me with a smile on his face. "I'm good, what about you?" He then shook my hand and asked if I'd like to come inside and look at the TV. "Well, of course I do," I said. "So you didn't bring anyone with you?" he asked. No. Why?" I said. "Oh, nothing. No reason. I was just curious is all. I get worried sometimes about meeting up with people because I've had bad experiences in the past," he said. "Oh, yeah, I get it." And I let out a bit of a nervous laugh. I was thinking about how that was such a weird question to ask someone in this certain situation. Yeah, I lied to him because it felt necessary, and it was dark outside anyways, and my car windows were tinted. So if he tried to look outside and in or at my car or anything, he wouldn't have saw Mason anyways. We made small talk for a few, and all of a sudden I heard some weird yelling. It was kind of muffled sounding though. It was very faint, but I could still hear it just slightly. "What was that noise?" I asked. "Oh, that's nothing. It's probably just my two boys roughhousing in their bedroom," and he pointed down the hallway. That was the exact moment that I knew something was wrong, because the yelling I heard did not sound like it was coming from where he pointed, like at all. It sounded like it came from the complete opposite side of the house actually, almost like underneath us or something. I thought I was just being paranoid though, and I didn't want to seem crazy, so I dropped it. He asked if I was okay, and said I seemed like I was on edge. I said yeah, I'm okay, no worries at all. "Okay, good," he said. "Let's take a look at the TV now so I can get you out of here quicker," he said. "Just follow me downstairs. I have it set up and plugged in down there in our guest bedroom, so that way you can see it works. He opened the basement door and moved his hand in such a way that implied he wanted me to go first. So I did. I felt a little uncomfortable, but I still felt like I was just overthinking. The first step I took, he pushed me down the stairs. Immediately I tripped and rolled all the way down. Luckily I didn't break any bones somehow, but I hit my head multiple times on my way down on the wooden stairs. When I got to the bottom and I was working myself to get back up, he was standing over me with a crowbar and he didn't say a word. He just stared at me for a few seconds. Then he swung and tried to hit me in the head with it, but somehow I managed to dodge it. I then kicked him in the stomach. I grabbed the opposite side of the crowbar that he was holding, as he bent over and I whacked him right in the head with it. He dropped to the ground and passed out immediately. I took no chances and ran up the stairs as quickly as possible, screaming for help and yelling Mason's name. As I was leaving, I heard someone screaming for help in the basement, but I couldn't bring myself to investigate it further. I just had to leave. I got in the car and drove off, and I was freaking out, like borderline hyperventilating, while trying to explain to Mason what just happened. And then I told him how I thought there was someone else down there in that basement who had been trapped down there or something. I couldn't even form my own thoughts. My heart told me to go back and to try to help whoever was down there, but I just couldn't. We called the police and they showed up to the scene very quickly. I told them everything that was going on. Mason said we had to drive back to the house so we could talk to the police when they got there. As much as I didn't want to, I knew he was right. When we got back less than 10 minutes later, there were already 3 police cars there. We waited out there by the end of the driveway for one of the officers to come out and to talk to us, so we could tell them our side of the story and to see what was going on. The man was still passed out on the ground when the police got there, apparently. They put him in cuffs and got him to a hospital. I don't know all the charges he was being charged with, but he'll be getting locked up in prison for a very, very long time. Maybe even a life sentence, because I heard he has a very lengthy past, and they are still investigating his case. Turns out he had 2 other people in the basement, locked away into 2 separate cages, the size your average dog would fit in. He had been torturing them, and Lord only knows what else. There is not a single hour that goes by that I haven't thought about this. I've been going to this therapist though. He helps me a lot, but I'm still really messed up from it all. It haunts me every single day of my life. I have been put on Prozac for my anxiety. I just wanted it to all go away. The thoughts, the nightmares, my trauma, everything. Every day is a battle for me right now, but I'm trying my best to stay positive. That's all I can do, right? I used to buy iPhones, video game systems, TVs, and tons of other stuff on Facebook Marketplace and flip them on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace for a profit. I've been doing this for years now as a side hustle, and I've learned a lot along the way. I would mostly try to flip iPhones because they seem to have the highest profit margin. This particular time, I had got my hands on this iPhone X for like $155. This was over a year ago, so that was an insanely good deal. You'd be surprised how low you can talk these people down if you try. Most people will decline the ridiculous offer, but a lot of people just want quick cash, and they will sell to the first person who reaches out to them. So I took advantage of that completely. Anyways, I had listed the iPhone X for sale for $300, and I put in the description that I would consider the best offer. Usually these phones sell quick, so I was never too worried about declining offers less than $300. Because most of the time, I could get the phone sold within a week for the original asking price if I just waited. After only an hour of posting the listing, I had someone reach out to me that was interested in the phone. She asked me a few questions and rearranged a meetup for the next day, late afternoon after she got out of work. She messaged me a few hours before meetup and asked if I could please just drive out to her house instead of meeting at Walmart like we had previously planned. I was immediately alarmed by that, but I went ahead and asked her for her address, so I could put in my GPS app on my phone to see how far of a drive it was. She was just under 20 minutes away, which really isn't that far of a drive. And she was paying the full price of $300 for the phone, so I decided to do it. I told her I could drive to her house and that it wouldn't be a problem. and I just told her to let me know what time I should be there. She overly thanked me and proceeded to tell me how much of a lifesaver I was, and that she really appreciated me for helping her out. She then asked if I could come at 7:30 and that she would for sure be home at that time. I agreed, but I didn't like how late she wanted to meet. I had to wake up for work the next morning at 5 a.m., and I like to hang out at the house and get some me time in before I have to go to sleep. When she originally said we could meet after she gets out of work, she said late afternoon, so I was expecting that to be anywhere from like 4:30 to 6 o'clock maybe at the latest. But I just went along with it anyways, because I really wanted to sell the phone. This lady didn't live in a neighborhood. She lived on a road off of a main road in the city. She definitely had neighbors, but the area had more of a slight rural feel to it. It was about 7:20 when I left, because I wanted to make sure she was going to be there when I got there. I let her know when I was on my way, and that I would be there in about 20 minutes. When I got there and knocked on the door, my anxiety tripled as I was waiting for an answer. It was starting to get dark, so that didn't help much either. When the woman opened the door, she introduced herself as Sabrina. She told me to come in and introduced me to her husband, who was sitting there on the couch in the living room. Almost immediately, they started harassing me, making fun of my clothes and the way I looked even. They tried to play it off as a joke, but I felt the passive aggressiveness strongly. Almost right away when I walked in, I had this weird feeling about these people. Something about them just felt very wrong. I think Sabrina was on some sort of drug, because she was acting weird and she just looked high on something. And I'm not talking about weed, I'm talking about serious hard drugs. Like her eyes were all sucked into her face and she was as pale as a ghost. She had to have been on something, just trust me, because she was just not acting right. Not like a normal person would anyways. She was being rude and slightly demanding the whole time I was there, and arguing with her husband about how much she was willing to pay for the phone. I let them look at the phone. Sabrina wanted to put her SIM card in the phone before she bought it because she wanted to make sure that it would work. She then started complaining about a tiny crack that was on the phone, even though it said in the description that there was a small crack, and it was completely visible in the pictures I took. She started getting upset and saying I was trying to scam her. She said she wouldn't pay more than $200 for it. I immediately said no and asked for the phone back. She continuously tried to negotiate and I told her I wouldn't do a dime less than $250. I made it very clear I wouldn't take anything less than that. Well, she didn't like that very much. She took her SIM card back out of the phone and quite literally threw it at me. And I mean she really threw it at me, like really hard. The phone hit me directly in the face, and then it fell on the ground after it bounced off my head on the hardwood floor. It landed on the screen and completely shattered the phone screen. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I asked. Then she ran off somewhere, which I assumed to be her bedroom, and started yelling and like crying hysterically. Her husband tried to calm me down, and he gave me like $100 for me to not call the police. I took the $100 and I didn't call the authorities, even though I was still tempted to. I kept my word though and stayed true to our agreement. Part of me didn't even want to deal with the situation anymore, if I'm being honest anyways, so that's part of the reason why I didn't call the cops. Why the hell would anyone act like that? Especially a grown adult. I don't know, man. Beats me. People are crazy. She was probably just trying to win one over on me by gaslighting me and making me feel bad so she could get what she wanted. She said she would do the $300 before I got there, so I was really pissed off about the whole situation. The crack on the phone that she was complaining about was unbelievably small as well. It was more of a scratch, honestly. I ended up fixing the phone screen for like $70, I think, and I sold it a few days later for the full $300. I have completely learned my lesson though, and never will I again be driving to someone's house for a Craigslist transaction or meetup. Nowadays I refuse to meet anywhere other than the police station. One day I was browsing Craigslist out of pure boredom. I wasn't looking for anything specific at all, and I didn't even know at the time that people use Craigslist for dating, or like meeting new people and to make new friends or whatever sometimes. But after I did some digging, I found out that it was definitely a thing. I was really bored and I was pretty lonely, so I started looking through the listings. There was a guy named Tom who was really handsome. He said he was 32. I was 34 at the time, so we were pretty much the same age. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I'm a very laid-back person though, so whatever happens, happens type of thing. He had a good vibe and he seemed like a real person. And he wasn't like overly attractive, so I wasn't worried about a catfish situation much either. He was definitely handsome though, and everything about his bio I liked. We seemed to be into all of the same things, so I gave it a chance. We started talking and eventually he got my number. We talked for a few days over text and over the phone as well. It was also a plus because he was less than 10 minutes away from me. He asked if I would like to go out that weekend at a nearby bar on Saturday. I said yes and we continued talking. Things escalated fast and we very quickly went from friendly conversations to very flirtatious talking. On our first date at the bar when we met on Saturday, everything was going well. We made small talk, got pretty drunk, ate good food, and I had a lot of fun. I definitely liked this guy and I had feelings for him. Later into the night, just before we were about to leave, I got a text from a random number that said, and I quote, "Stay away from my man. You better not be there with him when I get there." I was very confused, and I showed him the text I had received. He played it off like it was nothing and that he had no idea what it was about or who it was. He then became very awkward and started acting suspicious, like he wanted to leave right away. Right before we were about to go our separate ways, his girlfriend showed up. Yes, I said his girlfriend. He had a girlfriend this whole time. I was pretty upset and I had been drinking, so I did not hold back on this woman at all. She started yelling at him and calling me all types of names and cussing at me. I started yelling back at her and I guess she wasn't having it because she literally took her shoe off and threw it at me. Then she started attacking me with her purse and punching me, pulling my hair and beating the crap out of me. I tried to defend myself by grabbing her hair, but before I could, I fell to the ground and I hit my head on the concrete. I had to go to the hospital because I practically fainted. That whole night was one huge mistake. I still can't believe I was ever in a situation like that to begin with. I am a very quiet and reserved, decent and respectful person, so this whole thing was very out of my element, if you will. I don't even know how she found out about us, or even how she knew we were together at the bar. I'm glad she did find out though, before I got too invested in this guy and got my feelings hurt more than I already did. She ended up going to jail that night and got charged with assault. I walked away with no charges or jail time at all. I did walk away with a severe concussion though, and a big fat reminder of why I will never meet up with someone random from online again. I have a fiance now, and we've been together for over 5 years, and we are getting married next year. We plan on starting a family soon, and I have never been happier. This is just one of those stories I like to tell when warning people about the dangers of the internet and meeting up with a complete stranger. You never know what someone's true intention could be. Things could have gone a lot worse for me that night. I was driving back home from my grandma's house on Thanksgiving last year. It's about a 45-minute drive, which isn't too bad if you ask me. It is totally worth seeing my family and being able to pick out on whatever my grandma makes everyone for dinner. I had a great time there, and everything went well. The food was amazing just like it always was, and I love being able to see my family. So it was just your average Thanksgiving, or actually, maybe not so much, because something horrible happened to me on my way home from leaving my grandma's. On my way to my grandma's house, just about as soon as I got into the car and started heading that way, I realized I was really low on fuel, and that I should probably stop and get some gas. I was feeling lazy, so I decided I was just going to wait and get some gas at a gas station nearby my grandma's house. I don't know why, but it must have completely left my mind, because I had forgotten that I was supposed to get gas when I got close to my grandma's. It wasn't until I arrived at my grandparents' house that I realized I had totally forgot to get gas. It's okay, I thought to myself. I'll just get gas first thing when I leave, on my way home. I was sure I had at least 30 miles before I ran completely out of fuel, and there was a gas station maybe only 10 miles away. I had an old 2001 beat-up Silverado that had been put through hell by its last 2 previous owners, with over 275,000 miles on it. And I guess the fuel gauge wasn't as accurate as I thought it would be, because on my way home, my truck completely stalled. I tried to call my grandma, but I wasn't getting any service. She lived kind of in the middle of nowhere, and I was even more in the middle of nowhere now, it felt like. Being parked off on the side of the road with no means of transportation, other than my own 2 feet. And with no way of calling anyone, I was quite desperate. Luckily, I had a gas can in the back of my pickup. Of course, it didn't have gas, but it was good that I had it, because with that, at least I could walk up to the nearest gas station and fill it up with gas, and then walk back to the truck, fill the truck up, and then I would be on my way. It was pretty late though, and it was dark, and there weren't many houses around, so it was really creepy. I must have had a 3-mile walk, I estimated. Maybe after 15 minutes of walking, a truck rolls up behind me. Old Faithful broke down on you, huh? Hey bud, why don't you hop in? I'll take you to the gas station. No thank you sir, I said. I politely declined, but the man seemed to take offense to it. Are you kidding me? You're just gonna walk up there when I'm offering you a ride? What do you think I'm going to do? Try and hurt you or something? He asked. No, you see... He cut me off and said, just get in the truck. Unless you really want to walk another 45 minutes to the gas station and at least an hour back, I could have you back here to your truck in less than 10 minutes, he said. Somehow he convinced me to get in the truck. Man, I really wish I never would have though, because I almost died that night. You see, my grandparents lived in a nice area, but they have been hearing things in the news about people going missing lately. So I was really skeptical about it. This man wouldn't take no for an answer, and I was feeling really lazy. He did a really good job at convincing me to get in, because I went against my gut feeling, which I never do. When I got in the truck, he was reassuring me that he wasn't just some weirdo, and that he really just felt like doing a good deed because he had nothing better to do anyways. That made me feel a bit better for a brief moment, but it didn't take long before I realized something was terribly wrong. I couldn't even make out what he was saying anymore. He started like mumbling to himself over and over, and I asked if he was okay, but he didn't answer me. Only a minute or so after that, he drove right past the gas station where we were supposed to be stopping at. Hey man, you passed the gas station, I said. That's when he looked at me directly in my eyes and said, You don't make the rules here. I do. Now shut your mouth if you want everything to be okay. I'm going to tell you right now that you're going to do everything I say, or things are going to end very badly for you. I started freaking the hell out and screaming at him to pull over and let me out. He was screaming at me, telling me to shut up over and over again. I tried to open the door, and my plan was that I was going to jump out when he started slowing down, like towards a turn or a stop sign, but I couldn't get the door opened, and I couldn't see to find the door handle because it was so dark. I realized that the door had been rigged and tampered in such a way that you can only open it from the outside. Luckily, I keep pepper spray on me for protection. I knew it was risky to pepper spray someone while they were driving, but clearly I was running out of options. I sprayed him, and then we started swerving. I tried to steer the wheel the best I could to make sure that when we stopped or crashed, that I would be as safe as possible. I braced myself the best I could, and we crashed right into a ditch, straight into a small tree. I hit my head on the passenger window pretty hard, and I felt a bit disoriented for a moment. When I became fully aware of what was going on again, I started panicking even more. Luckily, the man was knocked out cold, and I was able to crawl over him and get out of the driver's side door. I grabbed my gas can and ran as fast as I could for like a mile back to that gas station where we were supposed to stop at and get gas. I ran all the way there without stopping for a single breath. I was really out of shape at the time, and I have never ran like that in my life. But you'd be surprised at what you're capable of when your survival instinct kicks in. When I got there, I told the cashier what was going on and that I needed to use a phone to call the police. The police showed up in a matter of minutes and drove me back to my car. They made sure I didn't need medical assistance before letting me off on my way. I gave the best description to the police that I could, in hopes it would help to find the man. Apparently the truck was still there, but he was gone. The truck he was in was actually stolen, so they still have no idea who he was. I really hope they find him though, before he can hurt somebody else. I was driving home from work one night. I work second shift at a hospital, so when I leave and clock out of work, it's always late. Anywhere from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Sometimes even later than that, It really just depends. I have about a 25-minute drive home from work every day. Although that's not ideal, the pay makes it well worth it. Usually I take the highway home because it's much quicker. But depending on my mood, sometimes I'll take the back roads home, or even the long way through town. This particular night I took the highway because I was ready to be home and relax. I had been working a lot of overtime back then, so I was pretty beat. Somewhere along the way of driving, I was probably almost halfway home. There was a car that practically came out of nowhere, it felt like. I usually didn't see many cars on my way home from work, because it was always late when I left work. Like I said, and usually not many people were out. This car came from behind me going at least 90 probably, and they zoomed right past me. I thought that was a little unusual because I usually don't see people speeding through here, especially not at night, because again, like I said, there's hardly any activity in the area at this time of night. I didn't think too much of it though. But as the car got a bit further past me, it started swerving into the other lanes, like really bad. And then I noticed that the car's speed was fluctuating heavily. When it would speed up, only shortly after it would slow down, very quickly. Then they would step on the brakes harshly. And then only a brief moment later, the car would speed back up, like really fast. This happened over and over again. I felt like it may have been worse than just a drunk driver, so I got as close as I could without being suspicious to try and get a better look. I could barely see, because I was trying to keep my distance and maintain my safety in case it was a drunk driver. I'm glad I witnessed this though. Even though it traumatized me seeing this may have saved this woman's life. Because the man driving was beating a woman that was in the backseat repeatedly. Some sort of object it looked like. I couldn't believe my eyes. Right then I called the police and I told them what was going on, where we were, and which direction we were going. I told them the license plate number and every detail I could about the vehicle and the two people that were in the car. The dispatcher told me I shouldn't be following them, but I didn't care if I got in trouble. I just wanted to make sure that that lady in the car was going to be okay, and that that man would get caught. I followed them probably for like 7 or 8 minutes, until I heard sirens in the distance. The man started speeding up even more, as much as his PT Cruiser would let him, I assume. I got out of the way of the police and slowed down my speed just a bit, but I tried to stay with him as much as possible to keep a close eye, and so I could talk to the police if I needed when they caught him. Eventually he swerved off of the highway into a big open field area and spun out, and then the car barrel rolled probably like 5 times at least, before it came to a complete stop. The man ditched the car and tried running away, but the police caught up to him quickly and tased him and arrested him. One of the officers got the girl out of the car, and it was evident that she was beaten very, very badly, with cuts and bruises all over her body and face. Apparently she had been kidnapped by the man just 45 minutes prior from a bar, out of town nearby in the same county. Turns out the man was wasted as well. I'm sure he got charged with over 5 different felonies and will be going to prison for a very long time. I will be testifying at court for this lady as a court witness sometime later this year. I'm happy I did what I did though, because I did what I thought was right, and I'm glad I listened to my intuition to stay behind them and to follow them and find out what was happening. If you have a gut feeling about something, there's a good chance it's valid. Fortunately though, that situation could have been a lot worse. Someone could have died that night easily, any one of us. The man almost ran into me a few separate times, but I felt like I needed to follow him until he got caught. And yes, I would do it again. I would never have a single regret about doing what I feel like is right. I was supposed to be hanging out with my friend one night after he got out of work. I was picking him up when he got out, because at the time he didn't have a car. He told me he would be getting out at 7 p.m. I got there like 15 minutes early though. I texted him when I got there to tell him that I was there. He texted me back a few minutes later and told me that he was sorry and that he was going to be getting out a little later than he expected, and said that he should be done in about an hour. I was a little upset for a second, but really it wasn't that big of a deal, and it definitely wasn't his fault anyways, so I wasn't upset at him at all. I was only slightly annoyed at the situation of itself, but only for a brief moment. Instead of sitting there just doing nothing and waiting for him, I decided to go kill some time by driving around and listening to music. Not too long after driving, my stomach started growling. Really, the only thing I could think of to eat was like Taco Bell or McDonald's. I ended up settling for McDonald's, as it was closer than Taco Bell was. I got my food and then I ate in the parking lot. When I finished eating, I still had like 30 or 40 minutes of time to kill. I didn't know how else to kill time other than by driving around. As I was driving around listening to music and on my phone probably texting my friends. Stupid, yeah I know, to be driving around and texting, but I was a teenager, so yeah, I'm sure you're not too surprised. I didn't really have anywhere specific in mind that I was going. I was kind of just driving and figuring it out as I went. I ended up on some back roads, which I drove on for about 10 minutes I would say. I was driving real slow, and there were nowhere near as many cars around as there were on the main roads, so this way I could get away with being on my phone a little bit more, because I wouldn't have to pay as much attention. Suddenly I noticed there was a car behind me. I didn't think much of it at all. I just had to speed up a little bit though, because I was going well under the speed limit and I didn't want to piss anyone off. The car caught up to me quickly though, and it got really close to me before he had to slow down. Otherwise he would have hit me. What the heck is wrong with people, I thought to myself. I mean seriously, I don't think this man could have gotten any closer to me without hitting my back bumper. I was starting to get a little bit annoyed because he was following me like this for at least 3 or 4 miles at this point. I thought about brake checking this jerk, but really that would have made me no better and if not worse in this situation. Either way, what he was doing was very unnecessary to say the least. There was like no oncoming traffic, so he could have easily just passed me at any point in time. No problem at all. My friend texted me and said that he should be getting out in like 15 or 20 minutes. I said okay, I started heading that way. So I was probably like 15 minutes away from his work and I wanted to make sure I was there on time when he got out. It wasn't until I made a few turns that I started to question if the guy behind me was following me. I had made like 4 left turns by now in a row and he was still behind me. He started to back off just a bit though, after tailing me for like 10 minutes straight. But he was certainly still behind me following. The car followed me all the way to the gas station where my friend Jacob worked. The gas station wasn't in the middle of nowhere exactly, but it was in a rural area. There was maybe 2 to 3 houses nearby, and not a whole lot of anything else going on if I'm being honest. When I got there and pulled into the gas station, and I saw that he pulled in there with me, and I saw that there were no other cars besides mine and the guy who was following me. That made me feel like something bad was about to happen. The guy parked right next to me, and with his window down, he kept trying to get my attention. I tried my absolute best to not look at him and pretend like I didn't hear him, but that's pretty hard to do, considering he literally got out of the car and legit started banging on my window and screaming at me, telling me to unlock the door. I was panicking, trying to pull my phone out of my pocket so I could call the police. But right before I was about to call the cops, Jacob walked out and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Get the hell out of here, man." "Or what? What are you going to do about it?" the strange man said. He then started charging Jacob and threatening him. Jacob lifted his shirt and revealed he had a handgun. That's right when the man backed off and went to his car and sped off. Still to this day, I don't know what that guy was trying to do, and what his plan was or whatever. Maybe he was on drugs or something and mistook me for someone else. I don't know. Either way, I'm thankful Jacob was there, and that he was able to scare him off. Jacob got in the car with me and we sped off as well. "What the hell was that all about?" he asked me. I told him I didn't know, and that I had no idea who that guy was, and that he had been following me for over 15 minutes. This guy was huge, and I mean way bigger than I was, and was clearly trying to pick on people who were smaller than him, by using his size to his advantage, just like a bully. You see, a lot of people hate guns, and I understand why, but I hate the crazy people that get their hands on guns more. I think it's important to be able to protect yourself though, from those crazy people, because I never would have expected something like this to happen to me ever. I know Jacob has a concealed pistol license, but in a workplace I'm not sure if he was legally allowed to carry or not, and that might have been why he didn't want me to make a police report, but I'm sure glad he had protection that day. I'm just worried that I might run into that guy again. I'm also worried that he'll try and do this to someone else as well. Every day I'm more and more shocked at just how many crazy people there really are in this world. Hopefully I never have to hear of him again, unless it's that he's locked up in jail or in prison. I used to do DoorDash 2 summers ago. It was easy money and it was actually kind of fun. Well, for it being work anyways. My girlfriend and I would drive around for hours just listening to music and delivering food. Most days I could profit around $120 easily in less than 6 hours, which was better than the minimum wage job I had prior, working at a gas station for like $9.45 an hour. This night that I'm talking about though, I was alone. It seemed like DoorDash was always busiest in my area at nighttime, so usually I would start at about 4 or 5 p.m. and dash until 11 o'clock or later sometimes, just depending on my mood and what I had going on that night. I live in a small town, so usually I didn't have to wait too long for the food in the drive-thru, as there wouldn't have been anywhere near the amount of cars that you would see in a bigger city. I'm serious, like, I don't think we have more than 6,000 people here. That's how small my city is. I think this one in particular was a McDonald's order, and those were my favorite, just because I could usually get in and out quicker than most of the other places, like KFC and Taco Bell for example. The drive was much further than usual though, just over 12 miles I had to drive, but the order said it was over $10, so I accepted it. On my way there, as I got closer, when I started to realize that the house was in the middle of nowhere, off of some back roads, I got a bit nervous. It was kind of by my mom's house though, just a few miles further south. I actually knew the area quite well, but I didn't recognize the house very much. It looked like it would have been a very nice house at one point in time. It was a 2-story house, very large in size, but it looked really creepy. It sort of looked abandoned, and it looked like it hadn't been maintained very much at all as of recent. It was on the corner of 2 different streets, Birch and Hollow Road, I think. The house had no light coming from it whatsoever, and there was no street lights at all either. It was very dark and extremely eerie. I got a little bit nervous to be honest, so before I stepped out of my car, I got my anxiety together and took a couple deep breaths. Yes, it was that scary. The house looked like it could be haunted or something. And now I know what you're thinking, but please just try to listen. If you have never been through a paranormal experience, you might think I sound insane. But those of you that have witnessed things, like things we are not supposed to see, I know you would know what I'm talking about. Talking about that feeling you get when there is some unknown type of negative energy around, and you can feel the anxiety and dread in your chest, and that's to say the least. Couldn't exaggerate enough to some of you to understand, but it was definitely the most uncomfortable feeling I've ever felt in my life. As I made my way up to the house, I forgot that it said hand to customer, but then I remembered, so I had to knock on the door and wait for the customer to answer so I could hand their food to them. So I knocked, and then I waited, for probably 30 seconds or so, and right as I was about to knock again, there was an extremely loud screaming sound out of nowhere. It was absolutely ear-piercing. I just about jumped so high it moved me backwards, and I almost fell down the cement steps. And that's when I ran straight to my car, and I dropped the food in a panic. I was parked all the way at the end of their long driveway, on the side of the road, so it took me a bit to finally make it to my car. The screaming continued the whole way to my car. There is no way any human would be capable of screaming like that. I mean, it was wretched and vile and just absolutely demonic. I literally started having a panic attack, and I was shaking so bad that it took me several times to put my key in the ignition to start my car. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. The screaming abruptly stopped just before I got the car to turn on. As I was taking off, I made one last look at the house, and right there in the front window was a tall, skinny, black shadowy figure with huge white wide open eyes. I'm telling you right now that it definitely wasn't a human. It wasn't a costume either. It was some sort of spirit. You might think I sound insane or paranoid or whatever, and you can think whatever you want, but I know what I saw, and I'm a perfectly healthy guy, mentally and physically. I can assure you it was real and not some hallucination. I didn't tell anyone about what happened though, for obvious reasons. I'm well aware that my friends and family would think I'm absolutely psychotic, and would probably try to send me to the ward. Anyways, the next day on my way home to my mom's house for dinner, I took a slight detour so I could pass by that house, because the curiosity was killing me. I knew it was a bad idea, but I couldn't control the urge. Plus, it was daytime, so I convinced myself I would be much safer. The food that I dropped off the night prior was still on the ground, scattered all over the place. It was right where I left it, so someone or something was definitely trying to lure me there. Who the hell just wastes money on DoorDash as a prank, you know? I'm pretty sure no one. I just know in my heart that there was a lot more to that situation that I will never know about. And honestly, it might be better that it stays that way. One night when I was doing Uber Eats, I almost fell victim to a child predator and a killer. I didn't know who he was at the time, or the history of the house that I was delivering to, but here's my story. There are lots and lots of allegations about this man. Everything from sexual assault, murder, kidnapping, child abuse, and more. He was a very sadistic and evil person. I heard rumors about what he did to his wife as well. But he's rich, and a lot of people think he got away with it all for so long because of his money. I like to think that karma finally caught up to him though. Apparently they found him dead in his house a few weeks ago, and I heard about it on the news, which is what resurfaced the nightmare for me all over again. Now remember, I didn't know about all these things beforehand, otherwise I wouldn't have delivered his food or accepted his order. Nonetheless, even show up to his house at all and knock on his door. They say he had a heart attack when he was alone, and that's how he died. Some people think he was murdered. It's a crazy story with lots of theories, but we do know one thing, and that was that he was a very sick individual. They didn't find his body until weeks after he passed. I believe everything that was said about him because of what happened to me. So now that you know about him, let me tell you about what happened to me. It was just a normal day of delivering Uber Eats. I probably did about 15 deliveries that day. I do this 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I try to always at least hit my goal of doing 10 deliveries each day or more. I was about to call it a night, but then I got an order that said it was for $12, which was quite a bit higher than the average order I would accept. So I said screw it and I did it. It was getting late though, and generally I didn't like doing deliveries at night unless someone was with me. I guess I just wanted some extra money, so that's why I did it. When I got to the house, it was insanely beautiful. I wouldn't say it was a mansion, but like kind of. To me it was. Coming from the low income family I do, I was thinking that these people must be filthy rich. I knocked on the door and anxiously waited just a moment, until a nice looking older man opened the door. Hey bud, thanks for bringing my food. I know it's tough out there dealing with all those crappy customers, so here you go. I want to give you this. And he handed me a $100 bill. What? No way. Are you serious? Thank you, sir, I said. Hey, no problem, Brandon. Now tell your mom and dad I said hello. It's been a long time since I've talked to them. How are they doing? He asked. Oh, you know my parents? That's cool. Yeah, he said. I know them from your grandparents. I used to babysit your mom when she was just a little one. I thought that was pretty cool, and I thanked him again for the tip. But I told him I better get going and that my mom would be getting worried about me soon. He said okay and to be safe driving. Just as I started walking to my car, he said, Hey bud, I know it's cold outside. Would you want to come in real quick and have a cup of hot chocolate? I already have some made. It'd only take a few minutes. I thought that was a bit weird, but he knew my mom, and he even knew my full name. And he seemed like a really nice, wholesome man. And it was really cold. And I also did have a really long day, and hot chocolate sounded pretty nice. And in the back of my head, I was thinking that he might give me more money if I'm lucky, so I accepted his offer. He told me to have a seat at the table while he was preparing our drinks. He walked to the kitchen and was talking to me while making our hot chocolate. I don't think he knew I saw it first, but I think he realized pretty quick that I knew what he did. I asked what he put in the hot chocolate, and he said he only put sugar and milk in it. But I saw that he definitely put something else in there as well. I was almost 100% sure he was drugging me with something. Some sort of sedative, probably. I didn't say anything about it though, and I tried to stall as long as I could. It was a very tense situation, and he started asking me why I haven't drank my hot chocolate yet. I told him my stomach started hurting, and that I was already feeling nauseous. And on top of that, I told him that I had hypoglycemia, and that it was probably a good idea that I didn't drink it anyways. Because I try to stay away from sugar as much as possible, because it makes my blood sugar spike, and it could make me have a panic attack. He then got visibly angry and insisted I drink it. He said it was rude to decline after he gave me $100 and invited me to his home and prepared me a nice drink. I told him I was sorry and that I would try to drink as much as I can. I put the cup up to my mouth, and he let out this gut-wrenching creepy smile. I pretended to take a big gulp, but as soon as I put the cup down, his facial expression completely changed. He stared directly at me, very intensely, then slammed his hand on the table and stood up and said that it's not okay to lie, especially to an adult. He started to make his way around the table, headed straight towards me. I probably would have ended up just like those other kids and his wife if I wasn't fast enough to get out of there. I ran like lightning to my car and sped off before he even made it to the front door. I rushed home and told my mom what happened, but when she called the police, it got brushed to the side. The police were acting like they were going to do something about it, but I don't think they ever did. It's a good thing he was an old man and wasn't very fast. It was also a good thing I saw him put something sketchy in my drink. I still feel dumb thinking back on it. And how could I be that naive to go in his house in the first place? I don't know. But it's a good thing he is finally dead and can't hurt anyone anymore. Everything came out on the news about him, and all of the rumors about our city's police department and judicial system being rigged seem very true right now. It's a shame that sometimes you can get away with anything if you have enough money. I DoorDash sometimes for extra money on the side, because I have been struggling with my bills. It's not the best money, but it's better than nothing. And I can work when I want, so that's mainly why I do it, rather than getting a second job. I live in Flint, Michigan. It's a very rough city, and that's just saying it nicely. If you have been to Flint or heard of it, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's one of the most dangerous cities in America. Per capita, I'm pretty sure it has made the top 5 most dangerous cities in the US a couple different years. I've had some close calls and some pretty sketchy encounters while DoorDashing here, but this was by far the worst one. I almost always get a bit nervous before doing a delivery. I try my best to only DoorDash during the day, as it is much safer, because most of the violent crimes here happen at night. I've heard horror stories of DoorDash drivers, Grubhub drivers, pizza delivery drivers, but I never thought anything like it would happen to me. You always hear about those stories, but you don't know how horrific it is until it happens to you. The sad thing is, I'm just trying my best to make an honest living and support myself, and by putting food on the table for my family. The north side of Flint is definitely the most dangerous part of the whole city, and that's where this took place. Martin Luther King Avenue. Notorious for drugs, prostitution, violence, gangs, you name it. Some areas in Flint are better than others, but for the most part, it's all just really bad. But the north side, like I said, is a whole different world. Certain areas you aren't even allowed to go through, unless you're from there. And if you do, you are risking your life. I'm not even exaggerating one bit. The police don't even drive through there, and 9 times out of 10, the police won't even show up if they're called. That's how bad it is. I have legit had a cop tell me before to never go through certain parts of the north side, and that if I absolutely must, that it's not necessary to stop at the stop signs or 4-way stops or any stoplight at all, and to obviously be careful when doing so. But I was told to not even come to a complete stop unless I absolutely have to. It's such a desolated area sometimes that you don't even have to worry about traffic as much. But the thing is, there are gangs out there who will try and rob you or hurt you. Sex trafficking is huge out there as well. I've had lots of messed up things happen to me here in Flint, and I've seen numerous counts of horrible things. As I was pulling up to the house to drop the food off, it looked like the house was abandoned. I was very careful though, because there are squatters everywhere in Flint that live in those abandoned homes. The house right next to it though, it had like 4 or 5 cars in the driveway, and some more cars parked on the side of the road on the curb. The house had loud music playing, and in the front yard there were 2 pit bulls chained up. I tried to not think about what was going on over there and just do my job. Even though it made me a little anxious, it's always best to keep your head down and to not bother anyone in these types of areas especially. I went around the back to see if there was anyone, and when I turned around there were 3 guys walking towards me. "Hey, are you DoorDash?" "I just need my food, man," he said. One of them grabbed it from me and I started walking towards my car quickly. I kinda sped off around them because I was having a really bad feeling. After taking only a couple of steps past them, one of them hit me directly on the back of the head, and then a couple more punches went flying to my face and my head from all directions. I tried to turn around to defend myself, but as I turned, one of them knocked me out cold. I don't know how long I was out for, or what they did to me while I was out, but they took my phone, all of my money, my debit cards, my watch, and they even took my shoes. I woke up shortly after in a haze, and I was really confused. I slowly started to piece together what happened to me. Luckily they didn't take my car though, but my keys weren't in my pocket either, so I was panicking trying to find them. I found them after a few minutes of searching. They were in the road by the curb that was next to me. I ran to my car and drove off. As I was leaving, I noticed they still had some sort of party going on over there, and I thought that was so bizarre. To them it was like nothing even happened at all. I'm sure they weren't worried about getting in trouble or anything either. They just took advantage of me like a bunch of bullies. I'm lucky they didn't hurt me worse though. While it was happening, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it out alive. I'm sure glad I lived to tell this story though, and I can say that it was truly a lesson learned. I still do DoorDash, just not in the Flint area anymore, and I'm way more careful nowadays. And yes, when I called the police, they told me they would send an officer out there, but I'm willing to bet you that they never did. I wasn't really expecting them to anyways.